Welcome, everyone, to the February session of Dr. Jaspersoft. My name is Mike Bilkowitz, as usual, here with you this month to talk a little bit about some more advanced Jaspersoft topics. Office hours are now beginning. With me this month, I've got Mehul Bamania, and he is going to present for you the topic of domain security files. Let me just show real quick our slide. So thank you everyone for joining. We'll get started in just a moment. Just a couple quick housekeeping as usual. If those of you that joined us before, if you have questions that come up during the session, please use that Q&A button that you see at the bottom of your screen and put your questions in there. If there's something that I can answer during Mehul's session, I will. Otherwise, we'll save those for the end after Mehul's session. I do have a poll as usual where we're going to ask for some ideas and your opinions about the future Dr. Jasper sessions. So go ahead and vote. That poll's open now. Go ahead and vote for topics that you might want to see in future sessions. And if you, let's see, if you have any questions, you're watching on YouTube later, feel free to email us. The email address is there on the screen, drjaspersoft@tibco.com. And we will get back to those, get back to you as soon as we can. And I think that's about it. All right, Mehul, are you with us?
Hey, Mike. Yep, right here.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and hand it over to Mehul for domain security. Go ahead, Mehul.
All right, I'm just going to share my screen. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. As Mike said, I'll be taking you to this domain security and overview of domains. So for agenda for today, it's quite simple. We'll look at the domains and security, and its security and what, how to set up a domain security, what is domain security, security file structure, how to get started with start writing security file and upload it to domain. So we'll talk a little bit about security itself and why do we need it. Then we'll jump onto some examples. I have a couple of scenarios that we can cover, and then we'll do some practical demonstration. So let's get cracking. All right, so overview of domains. The agenda for this session is not to look into details of domains, but to look at domain security itself and how we can set it up and get started with it. There is a Dr. Jaspersoft session on domains that Mike did previously, which details about domains and what domains are and what they are not. So if there is a link on it, if you guys want to reference that later on, we'll send out the link. On the resource slide, there is links to those as well. So what is a domain? Domain is a metadata layer that models and presents data access to a data source. So this means you can have a metadata layer on top of your data, which you can control with the metadata settings. So that would be quite useful in terms of restricting data and stuff. So within Jasper, domains are used to create ad hoc views and reports. And they are also used to limit access to data based on the security permissions of the person running the report. And you can also then use it to translate for static report text as well and labels. Okay, so what is a domain security file? So let's talk a little bit about domains itself and how we use it. So specifically in a multi-tenant environment, a domain can control, you can have a lot of data on your backend, which could be from different companies, for example, different tenants. One way to restrict that is to use a domain security file. So how is the file configured? So it's an XML configuration file that defines rules to control access to domain data based on username, user attributes, and/or user roles. So one way to kind of restrict is based on roles. You can have different roles for different users, and based on that, you can control what data they retrieve. You can also use user profile attributes. Attributes are some kind of settings we have, which I will show you. You can use those to control what data are retrieved. Okay, so it can contain grants. The file itself contains items and resources access grants that specify the access to grant based on users. certain aspect of logged in user. Okay, in terms of the security file, there are two kind of security in the domain file itself. One is the row level, and the other one is the column level. A row level security, it's more of filtering out particular rows. For example, if you have a database that has data for multiple tenants, you can filter out rows that are not belonging to a particular tenant, or vice versa. And a file can have both. You can have together a domain security and a column level, row level security and a column level security. All right. So in previous version of Jaspersoft server, we had the domains files used to be an external file, and you had to upload it while creating domains. Since 7.8, you can actually edit the file on the built-in editor that we have. I will show you that as well. All right, so the simple structure of a security file is quite simple. You will have security definition followed by access grants. The resource access grants are your row level security, and then item group access grants are your column level security, and it's that simple. There is documentation, detailed documentation on this, which you'll find a link at the end, which explains each and how to configure each of these. You can have multiple access grants. In each access grant, you can have a list of access grants as well. So we'll look into that a little bit later on. All right, so some of the examples that you might want to use domain security, it's, for example, the column level security. You might want to use it to restrict some columns based on the user who's logged in. So for example, boss is a human resource manager. Unlike regular store managers, he should be able to see all the data of all employees. So we can set up a column level security that only allows boss or a role, a particular role, to be able to access all employees' data, whereas the others, like store managers roles, will be only you can only see certain fields, which we'll configure in a minute. And then you can also set up a row level security grant, which kind of I explain here. It says Jasper and Joe are two store managers. Jasper is responsible for the Los Angeles store, and Joe is responsible for the San Diego store. So having these kind of row level security will allow us to filter out when Jasper is using the reporting. It will filter out all the rows for Los Angeles, and when Joe is using it, it will filter out for San Diego. It's quite useful for filtering out. This is based on profile attributes value that we will set. I will show you that as well. So we will set a profile attribute called city, and that city is the user city or store manager city. All right. So okay, so I'm going to do a demo here. So the use case for here is that we have three roles. We have two roles. We have HR manager and we have store manager roles, and we have three users. One is an HR manager, and two users are store managers from different cities. So let's see. All right, I just lost my. Okay, so here I'm logged into my Jasper server, and I have created a domain here. But let's have a look at the domain first. Okay, so I'm logged in as Jasper admin, and I'm just seeing the users that I have created. First, I'll show you the users I've created. I have on my organizations, I have 4 users. This is an admin, so you can ignore this user. We have 3 users here. One is called boss, and he has a role called role HR manager. And Jasper is again a user with role store manager, and Joe is also a user with role store manager. Both of these Jasper and Joe users have an attribute called city, which you can set at the user level. So there's a city, San Francisco for Joe, and city Los Angeles for Jasper. So what are we expecting to see? I will show you. Let's see. Let's run a report which I've created on a domain. But before running the report, I'm just going to quickly show you guys the domain I've created. So this is a domain that I've created on top of our demo data source, sample data source, and it's a simple simple domain without any security. So you can see on the security tab, there is no security involved at this point. So all I've done is pulled out the table and did a simple join to store and employees. And that's it. That's all it is. So let's go back and see the report that I've created. Okay, so I've created a report called employee by stores. If I click on that report, what that will do is it'll give me for each stores, each employees grouped by the store itself, and I can do some filtering based on cities. As you can see, I'm logged in as Jasper admin. I can see everything. Now, if I log in as a different user, for example, I log in as Jasper. If I log in as Jasper user and then run the same report again, you can see that there is no filtering or there is no restriction. As a Jasper user, I should only be able to see my city and not any other cities. But I can see everything here. You can see all the cities here, grouped by cities, and I can see details of everybody, which isn't really really good. So let's go back to I'm going to sign out as Jasper. And I'm going to go back to my domains. And then we'll put some security on the domain. So let's see, go back to the domains. Okay, so first security I'm going to put on the domain is that a row level security, which I want the users to be able to only see the data of the city they belong to. Or if it's a HR manager, they'll be able to see everything. Okay, so on the domains itself, you have a couple of options here. If you click on this button here, it will just give you a template for the security file, which then you can modify. You can also upload an external template if you want to by uploading it here, which was the case in the previous version. They didn't have the built-in editor. So I have a pre-built file here, so I'm just going to copy the file and I'll explain in there. All right, so let's remove the item grants for now. Okay, so as I said previously, it's a simple structure here. So you have your security definition with access grants and then a list of grants that you're granting based on users' permissions and attributes. So for example, this one here, the first one, what we're doing here is we're saying if the user logged in is a store manager, we want to filter out the data based on the attribute city, which was set on the profile attribute of the user. And these attributes, you can set it programmatically as well. So here we're saying anyone that's a store manager, filter out to their cities only. And if the role is an HR manager, then we don't filter. We don't do anything. We don't do no filtering. So HR manager can see everything. So let's save this domain again. And I will go back to my users. I'm going to log in as Jasper user again, just to see the data. Now, if I run the same report again, employee by stores, that should give me only the details, the stores that I belong to. So now you can see I can only see Los Angeles, and there is no other stores here. Everything is filtered out according to my city, which is set in my profile attribute. So I will go back to my, I'll log out as Jasper, and I will log in as Joe user, which is a store manager from a different city, and I will run the same report again. All right, so now you can see the city has changed. So now I can only see San Francisco and the data for San Francisco. This is also the case if I try to create a new ad hoc view. It will give me, if I use the same domain, it will give me only options for the three fields I have, the employee and the stores. All right, so let's log out again from Joe, and let's log in as boss, who's the HR manager. So if I log in as boss and then run the same report again, now I can see everything because I'm on HR manager role. Because I have an HR manager role, I can see all the cities and all the data for each employee. So this is the power of row level security when you want to filter out based on that, on the attributes. So let's quickly look at the attributes that I've set. I'm just going to log out as boss as well, and as a Jasper admin. There you go. These are the attributes I can set here. If I edit the user, I can set attributes. So there's a security attribute I've set here for each user. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the domains again. Yep, here. And let's edit the domain again. But this time we want to add a column level security as well. So what we're trying to do is if the person logged in has an HR role, HR manager role, they should be able to see all the attributes from an employee. But if a store manager is logged in, a person logged in is a store manager, they can only see certain attributes. So I will go back to the security and I'm going to add a row level, a column level security to it. So I have it here pre-written, so I'm just going to paste it and I will show you in a minute. All right, so let's go back here. Okay. All right, so I've added a item group access grant, which kind of defines which columns will be available for which roles. So here we're saying by default, everything is denied. And then if you have a role administrator or role HR manager, then you're granted everything. If you have a role store manager, then you're granted this access grant, which is only these three attributes. So first name, last name, and position title. All the rest of the attributes from the employee table should be hidden if you're a store manager. So everything will be denied by default, and then by each of these will be granted if you're a store manager. So let's save this domain again. And now I'm going to go back to my users management. And I'm going to log in as a Joe user, first of all. So log in as Joe user. Now I'm going to run the same report again. Okay, so now I try to run the report. What it tells me is these fields no longer exist because I don't have access to it. I only have access to certain fields. So these fields have been removed from the report for me. So if I remove items, now I will see the report. I can only see first name, last name, and position title. I can't see anything else. So now you can see there is also a row level filter, which is San Francisco for me only. And all the fields I cannot see, they're all hidden. I will log out here again, log back in as Jasper, and you will see the same behavior, but different city this time. Okay, so it's telling me these have been removed from me as well. And I will see the same fields. Again, the city has changed to Los Angeles because that's the city belongs to me. So log out here. Now, what happens when you log in as a boss user? So let's log in as a boss user. Okay, so if I run the report now, I should be able to see everything because and all the cities are there as well. So you can see all the cities for me because I'm HR manager, and I can see data of all the employees, every data that's been in this domain. So that's power of the column level security. And then if you try to create a new ad hoc view, I'm just going to log out as boss. If you're in a store manager role and you try to create an ad hoc view, that will automatically filter out the columns you cannot see. So here, employee, I can only see 3 columns. But we don't have any store ones, so I can see everything from the store. And that's the case for boss as well. If I go if I log out from Jasper user and log in as boss, and I'll try to create a new ad hoc view. And same domain again. Now what this will give me all the details for the employee. So that's quite powerful in terms of, if you want to provide this domain for self-service reporting to your users, because you can define what each user will see. Okay, I think I have covered on the security level everything. Mike, how are we doing on the questions?
We've had a couple that I've answered. And we've got an outstanding one right now, which is an interesting one, not completely related to domain security files, but Mark asked, he says they've hit performance issues in making a large security XML file, and their workaround was to use security tables. So they did lookup tables that have user ID of all the possible logged in Jasper users and some ID that indicates the user can see objects with that ID. They get the logged in user ID in a derived table in the domain, and wanted to know our thoughts on that solution, pluses or minuses. Do you have an answer for that, Mehul, or you want me to
Uh,
take a stab at it?
yeah, I think you can go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mark, it's an interesting one. I've not actually heard the issue of having issues with the size of the security XML file being an issue. I'm not sure. I don't remember which version you guys are running, but as you can see in 7.8, it changed so that we have an actual UI for it. I believe the technology is still the same, so but under the covers. So I'm not sure that that would necessarily help you to upgrade. I see you said you're in 7.1 still. So that it might be worth experimenting with, standing up an upgraded version to see if that makes a difference with the security file. My only resistance to using derived tables is a general one, and that is that generally derived tables cause performance issues themselves, right?
Yeah,
So it's something that I kind of recommend against, but in the right uses, it makes sense. Sorry, and my camera on the whole time. I think if your solution works, I've had lots of clients do similar things. Another solution is to actually write a custom query executor that actually, when it builds the query via the domain, the ad hoc view, it will actually check those security tables that you're talking about rather than doing it in a derived table. Because a derived table, you've probably noticed it does an inner select statement, and that sometimes adds some overhead to your query execution. Whereas if you build a custom query executor, you're actually modifying that query before executing it, and that tends to be a little bit faster, but that's a lot more a customization in place. So you can, if you have further questions about it, Mark, my email address, so you can hit me up and we can talk about it. Another question Mark asked, which I think is a good one, and I answered it live, so I'm not sure if people saw it, is he asked about the max length of a user parameter, which I think he meant a profile attribute. So he's asking about like putting a list of GUIDs into the profile attributes and then security checking on each element in that list. Technically, you're only limited by the database itself, and I checked. I think it's 2,000 characters is the limit now. The problem is where your limit's really going to come into play is if you pass that data via the URL or via like a post request, like a REST call. If you have too long of a data of value, you are limited by the URL length in the browser specific limit. So that's something I have seen with users when they try to put large GUIDs in. If they have multiple GUIDs for the same user, one single GUID is no problem, right? That's not an issue at all. But if you have multiples that they have access to, then you might come across the URL limitation, specifically with SSO and that sort of thing. Let's see. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any others fired in right now. Let me just share my screen again. Oh, sorry. Like it's my first time. All right, here we go. So that was great. Mehul, appreciate running through that. I know it's a little bit breakneck speed, bouncing between the domains and the roles and the different users. But there's a lot of really cool, strong features, a lot of good ways to filter out and control the access to the data that your end users have. I do want to go ahead, Mehul.
I was going to say, yeah, specifically in a multi-tenancy setup, it's quite powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick plug for our next session. It's going to be March 11th. Again, we're always the second Thursday of every month. It looks like we're doing a mouthful, integrating scheduled job output with AWS S3 buckets. We're going to talk a little bit about how outputting scheduled job report outputs that you don't want to necessarily put to your repository. You want to actually put it to some common location that users have access to, or that you can further control yourself. So that's the topic for next month. Don't forget, we do have on the slides here, Mehul mentioned, we've got the resources here. We've got some links here relative to the discussions from today. We always have all of these slides will be available on our wiki page, community.jaspersoft.com/wiki/Dr.-Jaspersoft. So if you're watching this again on the recorded session, feel free to go there to find the resources. And you can always email us, like I said, at drjaspersoft@tipco.com. And let's see. Oh, we do have a couple more questions that came in last second.
Yeah, there's one in the chat from Meomir as well. Don't know if you've seen that.
No, yeah, they just came in. Go. Did you read it? Do you want to address it? Go for it.
Yeah. So he says, how can we have logic with excluded fields in column level security rather than included for cases where there are many fields in table? So I'm not understanding questions.
So I think he's saying you showed how to only show me these 3 fields. And I think he's saying, how do I exclude? And I don't want to show field A or field B or field C.
Okay, so by default, everything is denied when you put that denied on the grant itself at the top level. And then you, one by one, you grant the fields that you want to include.
Right, and he wants to go the other way. So the other way, you could give access to everything and then add a denied to the specific fields you want to deny, right, Mehul? So you could always
that works both ways.
Yeah. Yep. So you would just grant access to everything, Mirror, and then you can deny A67 or A68 per your example here. And Georgie's got a question. Let's see. What would the best practice for creating domains that utilize domain security? If we filter by 2 attributes, let's say org ID and team ID, should we have those in each table in the join tree in order to avoid intermediate joins? Look, any way you can flatten your data is better for reporting. So that's the first thing I'll say. So if you're building the actual domain or the data, like a data warehouse, then flattening that data as much as possible makes things as simple as possible. When it comes to the access, the domain security file, as Mehul showed, you can have a join, you can have anything you want in the domain design. Ultimately, all the domain security file cares about is the joined data, the final result data that you have. So you just reference that joined data. It doesn't matter if they came from different tables. It as long as it's in your display section of your domain, you can reference it, right, Mehul?
Yeah, exactly. So that's based on it. The filtering is based on the items itself on the domain file. So if you export the domain file and compare the two and see the XML, you will see all the items that can be filtered once the join is done. So you can only do it on one place. You don't have to do it in multiple places.
That's right. That's right. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any others coming in right now. All right. And I know somebody said they had a problem with the video at one point. Obviously, this was all recorded and will be published hopefully within the next week or so to YouTube. We do have a playlist out there with all our previous sessions. You can get those links also on the Dr. Jaspersoft wiki page here that's noted here. As soon as it's published, I'll update those links so that you can get it. So if you had any issues viewing today's session, feel free to go out there. Hopefully it should work fine. And that's all I've got. I thank you guys very much. Really appreciate everyone's support and joining us today. Have a good rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you hopefully next month.